Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. Hope you're having a great day. Hope this video can make it a little bit better for you. Today we're going to be doing our updated guide for Leona, so let's just jump right into it, starting off with her card. So she is a 5 cost on the more expensive side, and Targon. She is a 3/5 with Challenger, and then Daybreak. This is the whole gimmick of the entire deck. Daybreak is the card that if it's the first card you play, you are then able to get a bonus. Now there's some ways you can work around this, like you have other cards you can play that activate a Daybreak effect of a card that's already on the board, or you have one card that just makes every single card you play trigger their Daybreak effect. But generally it's just the first card you play, if it is Daybreak, it's going to trigger this bonus effect. So her Daybreak effect is stun the strongest enemy. Level up, you've activated Daybreak 5 or more times, so generally it's going to take you like 5 rounds, unless you get some of those cards that can activate Daybreak more than once. Generally, though, a lot of those cards come in a little bit in the mid and late game when Leona's probably already leveled. Now, her level up is Daybreak, or when you activate another Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy and give me barrier this round. So while she's on the board, you activate other Daybreak effects, she's then going to be stunning the strongest enemy. And this can go off multiple times. So while Daybreak is just the first card, if you again can't kind of cheese that mechanic and get it to activate more, she can just keep stunning the strongest enemy that's not stunned. So she can end up just stunning the entire enemy board, which is quite good. And then having Barrier and Challenger, quite nice to make sure she can just attack the enemy and either drag them aside to protect her units, or just safely attack with that barrier so she doesn't die. Now her champion spell is very, very good. So it's slow speed, so if you get slow but steady, this will go off twice. Give allies 1/1 this round, so that is temporary. Activate an ally's Daybreak effect, and create a Leona in your deck. So this is one of your core cards where you don't want this to be the first thing you play, but when you play this, you're buffing up your whole board, and then you can activate another Daybreak effect again. So very strong, since Daybreak can normally just be the first card you play. And then when Leona is leveled, since you're activated another Daybreak, she is then stunning another target. And then right here, the very end, this is just her skill of stunning the strongest enemy. Now let's go over her constellation. It is unfortunately one that we'll get into it after we go over the powers, but the layout of it is not the best. But for the first power, allies have Daybreak grant me 1/1. So most of your cards already have Daybreak, but this just means all of your cards are going to have Daybreak grant me 1/1, so that's a permanent buff. Pretty good for just making your units a little bit better, but not that crazy yet. Your 2-star +1 starting mana. When you level an ally champion, create a Morning Light in hand. It costs nothing. So this is, again, the Leona champion spell. Very good that you're able to generate these, because you can buff up your whole board, and then again start triggering allies' Daybreak effects, which is also going to count this right here. So gives you units some further scaling. Now your 3-star is actually pretty crazy. Allies have Daybreak, or when you activate another Daybreak, grant me 1/1. So now they're not only buffing themselves up, but if they're already on the board and you play another Daybreak effect, they're scaling up. Or if you're using some cards like your Morning Light to activate a Daybreak effect, all of your units are actually getting that extra 1/1. So this is just giving you some crazy scaling. Now for your 4-star, this is actually incredible. When you target an ally, give it Barrier. You have a decent amount of targeting in your deck, and this essentially just makes your units almost unkillable unless the enemy just has like flat out obliterate or kill spells, because you now have really good scaling with your 3-star, but now it's so hard for the enemy to kill your units because you can just give them Barrier pretty consistently, and this actually makes Leona very, very fun. Your 5-star, pretty simple and straightforward. Mana flow, get a mana gem. And then the 6-star, I'll drop off my camera here. Whenever an ally's Daybreak is activated, activate it again. So for a lot of cards, they have a special Daybreak effect. Now it's going to go off twice. Also, that includes like your 3-star. So now your units are just getting twice the amount of scaling in addition to whatever other Daybreak effects they have. Now I will note this unfortunately doesn't count for Leona's level up condition of activating Daybreak 5 times. And it seems like that is intentional, which is a bit sad because it definitely makes her weaker than she otherwise could have been. But this is super simple and straightforward. Just all Daybreaks you do, trigger twice essentially, which is just giving you even crazier scaling on top of everything else. Now, as far as some of the bonus stars, extra Nexus health and reroll, not bad. Support champions have Solari Sunspear. This is very, very nice. So Daybreak, give me 3/3 this round. Now, this is only a temporary buff, but being able to drop your units, have them immediately get all of this extra power is really solid. And again, just helps your units be massive. While they will lose these stats at the end of the round, making sure they survive round 1 so you can then keep scaling them with all of your Daybreak effects is very nice. Also, this makes it super easy for you to trigger things like Trifarian, which is actually a fantastic power with her when she gets some upgrades. Next up for the Star of Blessing, we have, never can say this card, but this card gets locked to the Solari, so it gets Barrier, and this card is also one that can target another unit. So essentially this card, you drop it with Barrier, it targets another unit, giving them Spell Shield or Overwhelm, but then also is giving them Barrier. Very, very good. Your followers, your Quiet Adventures, have again this Solari Sun Spear. Very, very good, just making you have absolutely massive units, and again, just making it super easy to trigger your Trifarian. Star of Wonder, your Zenith Blade gets Battle Banner, so it's giving all allies 1/1. Zenith Blade, great for granting the unit some stats, giving them Overwhelm. This is now going to trigger a Barrier with your 4th star, and then it's just buffing your entire board. And then the rest down here are just your gemstone upgrades. So if we take a look at the constellation, over here we have the 1st star power, 2nd star power, and then right here we have the 3rd one. Now next we have your 4th star power. Now your 4th star power is excellent. You want to pick it up as soon as possible, but your star powers take an extra resource, at least your 4 and 5 one, of the star crystals, or duck feet as some people refer to them. And so if you don't have those resources, even if you have a ton of Leona fragments, you're now locked from being able to progress. So that always sucks. Up here we have a bonus node. Would have been better for this to be the 5 star so it's out of the way and you could just pick it up whenever you're able to. But if you head down here, here's now your 5th star. Your 6th star is locked behind your 5th star, which again, not the best, but the 6th star normally has to be further in the constellation, so it makes sense it's going to be locked behind something. But then the worst part is down here, your Star of Wonder, Zenith Blade has Battle Banner. Now I will say, out of most of the upgrades for the constellation, this one is not quite as impactful as some of the others, but still, this is now locked behind your 6th star. So if you don't go get her to 6 stars, you can just never get this. And then also we have all the gemstones locked behind the 6th star as well. And the gemstones are also in a sequential order. So if you want to get some of these ones down here, you have to first get these over here, which just makes these way, way harder to get, which is unfortunate. Now down to the side, we see your support champs have Solari Sunspear. This is a great upgrade. Nice that this isn't locked behind anything else other than the failings, which does suck. Then we have this card having the Locked at the Solari, another great upgrade. And then right here, Follows Require have the Sunspear, another great upgrade. So really, I would recommend coming through, getting your 4th star power, and then just heading down here right away, because these all upgrades are going to be very, very impactful for you. And then just getting the 5 and 6 star if you ever have the resources. So overall, as far as our constellation, some good upgrades in there, but the layout is pretty much a lot of the stuff you just don't want to do for constellations, which is unfortunate. Would have been better for, honestly, them to potentially switch these 2 nodes so that your 4 star is out of the way, and then all of your bonus nodes, you could just get that after your 3 star. Moving on though, let's take a look at your starting deck. So here we have your Solari Soldier, and just remember, if you have her at 6 stars, all these Daybreak effects are going to go off twice. So 1 cost, 2/2, so decent stat line, has that Serrated Dirk, so fearsome, that's normally not really going to matter. Philosopher's Stone, so when someone draw 1, that actually is quite nice. Having some draw in your kit, always good. And Daybreak, give me 1/1 this round. So just being a little bit stronger, which is quite nice just so they can survive the round you drop them, so you can hopefully keep them scaling up. Then you have your Zenith Blade, 1 cost because of that tier. Slow speed, so again, if you get slow but steady, this gets doubled. Grant an ally 1/2, give it Overwhelm this round. Daybreak, draw a Zenith Blade. So if this is the first card you play with that Daybreak effect, you then can immediately pull out another one. Do note you have to have another Daybreak in your deck, because it says draw 1, not like create 1. So if you don't have any Daybreaks in your deck, this won't work. So do be aware of that, because baseline, you only have 2 Zenith Blades in your deck. Then we have the Solari Shield Bearer. So 2 cost, 3/2, Daybreak, give me 4 health this round, and has that Challenger and Tough. So this is going to be a very tanky unit, especially if you get that Daybreak. Now, while this is just temporary, you can drop this, attack, drag a unit aside with a Challenger, thereby protecting a lot of your other units. Leona actually is one of the champions that is the best at just keeping your units alive and essentially making them unkillable, which can be quite fun. Next, then, we have the Sunhawk. This is one of your best cards. So 2 cost, 4/3 with that pickaxe. Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy. So this is very good. If you have them at 6 stars, that Daybreak is going to go off twice. You're going to stun the 2 strongest enemies. Also, this is one of the cards that's just really good to have on your board. And then this is one you normally want to be using some of your abilities to reactivate Daybreaks on this card to just give you a ton of control. Then we have Blinded Mystic. So 3 cost because of that ancient coin, 3 to play, grant an ally 1/1, and silence an enemy follower. So previously this card was just fine for you, but if you get her to Phalanx, you're now not only granting an ally 1/1, you're also giving them barrier for the round, which can be super impactful to just further protect them, but then also you're silencing an enemy follower, which can really help get rid of some rough enemy targets. Then we have Ravoon, the Daylight Spear. This is, again, one of your best cards. So 4 costs with that ancient coin, 5/5. Daybreak, create a random Daybreak card in hand. So good for some more card generation if you're running out of things to play. But then it's always day for us. So that means every single card you play is triggering a Daybreak if it has a Daybreak effect. This is excellent because now you can just scale your units out of control, triggering all of your bonus effects that generally you can only do once per round. And so this card, super, super good. Then we have Leona, and then finally we have Sunburst. 5 cost slow, again, slow but steady can be decent for you. Deal 6 to a unit. Daybreak instead silence it this round and deal 6 damage to it, which is going to be up to 8 because of the charging sigil. Now that silence is important because sometimes enemy units can be buffed up to be really, really big. The silence reduces them back down to their base stats, and then this can go off. Can be a good removal tool, but honestly, especially since it's so expensive, you normally don't play it too much. If you need to cut a card, especially if you ever at 4 stars, this is probably going to be the one to cut. Overall, the starting deck, they haven't really changed it at all when they upgraded her Constellation, but once you get it to 4 stars, suddenly a lot of these cards get a lot better, especially Blinded Mystic. Decent before, but now much better. And then this card, normally I didn't really care about it before. This would normally be my go-to cut. But now that this can get barrier from your Constellation and then give another card barrier, it's now so much better. So yeah, giving Leona that Phalanx 4-star makes her feel so much better. Let's take a look at Relics now, and we'll go through all of them, but I'll quickly just show you my favorite build for her at the moment, especially the one that's able to utilize her specific champion relic. So we have that right here. Shield of Daybreak, this is her relic. Power allies with Daybreak, so that should be all of your units, have tough, so they're, again, a little bit harder to kill than they already would be. Then when an ally activates Daybreak, grant allies 1 health. So you're already from your 3-star, granting your units 1/1 every time you activate Daybreak. Now you're also just giving them 1 extra health, so that they're going to be even harder to kill. Then we have Strength of Stone, 2 health, power. When you summon an ally, grant it 1 power and formidable. This actually works out super well because with the Shield of Daybreak, you're now scaling up your unit's health more than their power, and you have so much scaling in your deck. And then with your barrier, you can try to protect your units so they're not taking damage to their health, keeping essentially their power up because of that formidable. And then pairing this with a perfect Hex Core, so round start, create a Hex Core in hand. Your Hex Core upgrades have stopwatch and can upgrade an ally. So these are just right here. And essentially, this is able to give you a random keyword, but the main reason you're using this is just to have a burst speed way to target your own units to give them that barrier. This is by far my favorite build now with Leona, and Leona in general, but especially with this build, you just feel like a unstoppable juggernaut with all of your units. They scale up to be huge, the enemy just can't deal with them. Your units just don't die, and you just steamroll over the enemy. It's actually super fun. Again, if the enemy does not have just a outright kill spell or obliterate spell, it is so hard for them to kill any of your units, and so you just feel like an unstoppable force, and it is quite fun. Now, as common relics go, pretty simple and straightforward. If you want to level up as fast as possible, Cosmic Blessing, always the way to go. If you want to give her a little bit of protection to stay on the board, since she is normally your like stun engine, at least one of them, then going for Banshee's Veil can be okay. Storm Razor can be fine. Quick Attack Challenger is a very powerful combo, so that's one to potentially consider. Chameleon's Necklace, not bad. She is a 5 cost, so normally you're going to draw her by the time you need to play her, but her champion spell is excellent, so getting some more copies of her can be pretty good as well. And then one of the best common relics, just in general, Star Child Staff. Start adventures with 5 more regen, so every fight you're able to heal up 5 health. That can be super good, especially when you're first starting out, when you have only like 20 health, you don't have a lot of regen, so if you take any damage during a fight, it's going to be really punishing. This just helps you get some amount of sustain through the entire adventure and can massively increase your win rate. And it can make it so when you go to a healer, you normally don't actually have to heal up. You can actually cut a card, make your deck a little bit more refined, and overall, this can be great to help out your very early champions. And then lastly, the Z-Drive prototype, start adventures with 2 more rerolls. always solid, just to make sure you can get the powers and upgrades you need. As far as rare relics, you can go for just the normal like spell slinger build. So Archangel's Staff plus the counter plan is always solid. Being able to generate a Morning Light and play it every round is very good, because then you can play a card to trigger a Daybreak effect. Then you'll always have a Morning Light to buff up all your units, trigger another Daybreak effect. And it's generally pretty simple but powerful combo. And you can even activate or use the Chemtech Duplicator to double it. This can be very good because what you can use is your Morning Light on your bird that stuns the strongest enemy. So this will go off twice because of the Chemtech Duplicator. This is normally going to activate the round after you play Leona anyways. So the bird's going to stun 2, then Leona with her leveled effect is going to go off and stun 2 enemies as well. So essentially you play 1 card, your Morning Light right here, and then you stun 4 enemy units starting from the strongest and working its way down, also buffing up your units a massive amount. So overall, pretty good. Another decent option for you, the Blade Rack Allies Have Challenger. Just making sure all your units can take the best trades is always pretty good. And pairing it with the Overwhelm from the Troll King's Crown down here, it can be okay. Normally with Leona, you can have enough control to be stunning the enemy units, and then with your Challenger units, you can drag them aside so your bigger units can take the hit, or also you can give your units Overwhelm, so you can have your Challenger unit with Overwhelm be dragging the unit aside, still getting their damage through, and your other units can safely attack. So while Overwhelm is solid, quite often you can stun enough units that you can get by without it. So it's a little bit more of a safety net of just in case you're not having a good match, not able to get those stuns off. It can help you, but normally you can do pretty well without it. Let's take a look at rare relics now. Black Shield is actually pretty solid when you summon an ally granted spell shield. Leona, you're all about your units, keeping them alive and scaling them up. So just having another relic that's able to further help them can be pretty good with that, keep them safe from spells while your barrier keeps them safe from other attacks. Echoing can be okay. Making sure you get your Leona and then getting a bunch of your champion spell is actually pretty good. You do need to make sure that you can have other units to play at the start though, because you don't want a handful of Leona and essentially your hand's kind of bricked. Bound Fortune, this is one that is actually excellent for you. So draw the highest cost card that costs less my base cost, grant an epic item, reduces cost to 0. Baseline, your Ravoon is your only 4 cost, and so it's going to guarantee pull him out. That's the card that makes all of your cards Daybreak, or every card you play trigger their Daybreak effect, which is super, super good. So Found Fortune, if you can just make sure he is your only 4 cost, which it is by baseline, you just have to not pick up other 4 cost cards. It's going to be super good. You drop Leona, you then get a free Ravoon to drop him, and now all of your effects or all your cards you're playing are triggering their Daybreak, even if it's not the first card. This is super, super good for you. Frozen Tomb, a little bit of a mixed bag. For this one, you're able to get your Leona on the board because she gets summoned in this, but then she's not triggering her Daybreak effect because Daybreak is a play effect. As you see here, bonuses, this is the first card you play in a round. So you're going to get Leona on the board, but you're not going to get that Daybreak effect or your play effect from like Found Fortune. But if you really want to go for like a Chemtech build for Leona, this could be a way to try to get her on the board and get that Chemtech activated. So maybe pairing Frozen Tomb with like a Chemtech plus Grand Channel's counterplan could work for you. Hexcore, we already mentioned this a little bit earlier, but once you've at 4 stars, being able to have a guaranteed way you can burst speed target one of your units to give them barrier to protect them is incredibly good. So this is just good in general for you once you get to 4 stars, even outside of the build we showcased earlier. Suka Technique, if you want to just go all in with the scaling from your spells, especially your one right here, the Morning Light, this can be decent for you, but I do think it's a little bit more niche and there's going to be better options. And then the last couple big ones to mention, Stack Deck, 200 starting gold, allies have 1/1 for every 12 cards in your deck past 18 at game start. Being able to just make your units a little bit bigger, very good. Leona's already about having big units. Now this is potentially going to be a bit of a win more relic in some situations where you already have giant units and them being bigger isn't really going to matter necessarily. But if you just want to double down or triple down on that aspect, you definitely can. Starforge, being able to pair this with like a Luminous Orb to get her to 8 health in order to get this to trigger can be very good, getting that +1 starting mana. And Beast Within, you don't really have a subtype, so that's not really going to help you. And normally you can still get the enemy to be completely stunned so they can't block regardless. So not nearly as good as it is on many other units. But if you really just want that guaranteed overwhelm, it can be decent because there can be games where you don't draw your bird, you maybe don't draw your Leona, and so your main engines for stunning or controlling the board, you just don't get them. So making sure you have that overwhelm for the consistency can be okay. That's about it for Relics, though. There's a lot of different options you can kind of mix and match with. Those are just some of the better builds for her. Overall, this is my favorite build. It does take the Victor Relic and the Leona Relic, and I do think Strength of Stone can work with her regardless of pairing it with these two, but this one is super fun if you can do it. All right, that's it for the in-game portion. Let's go take a look at what powers you might want to look out for, support champs, cards to look out for, and finish off with her rankings. All right, taking a look at powers here. So up first, here on the left, we have the Vanguard Lookout. Game start, summon 2 Vanguard Lookouts. This is really nice for Leona. Now, having any units that get summoned at the start of the game can be fine for you, but this one is specifically the best in my opinion. And also having the units get summoned at round start, especially the ephemeral ones, not necessarily the best actually for Leona. It can still be fine, but normally for Leona, she wants to kind of fill out her board and then just work on scaling up her units. So having 2 units that are just already on the board can be some blockers for you, that's fine, but then they're going to be able to scale up every time you're doing your Daybreak effect, because your 3 stars has all of your allies getting that Daybreak. Grant me 1/1 when you activate another Daybreak. So just having units you can immediately start scaling up is very, very good. Here in the middle then, the Sweet Solitude. Round start, create a 0-cost fleeting time and dedication in hand. That is the Ornn target an ally, forge at once, which grants them 1/1. This is solid to, again, just further scale up your units, but it's especially good once you get her to 4 stars so that you are able to just give your units that barrier. Very nice, just protecting more and more of your units. But then we have Fated Allies, or We Got This, Allies Have Fated. Again, very solid, especially if you have Sweet Solitude or you're running like the Victor Relic. So when you target a unit, they get an extra 1/1. Once you have her at 4 stars, you're really trying to target units consistently. So this is just further helping you scale, which is fantastic. Next up then, Fixer Upper, round start, give your weakest ally 3/3 this round. Again, with Leona, you want to have your units be able to survive, stay on the board, and just keep scaling. So this is great for helping your weakest unit be a little bit stronger, helping it survive a little bit more. And then if your unit did have a little bit of health missing, this kind of works also as a heal, because once they lose those stats, they're going to keep any of the health if they were damaged. So overall, pretty good for you. The Thrice Bound, this is actually pretty crazy, especially if you play around it. Game starts, summon your highest cost follower from your deck and curse it with Shackles 3 times. The Shackles, it's making it so they're immobile. They're sitting on your board. You can't block or attack with them until you spend these Shackles, which by baseline is like 6 mana. Now again, baseline, your strongest or your highest cost follower is your Ravoon, the card that makes all of your other cards trigger their Daybreak effects, regardless of if they are the first cards you play. So making him just get summoned at the start of the game immediately, even if he can't attack or block, is totally fine. So this actually be pretty crazy for you. Just turn 1 Ravoon, having him all game. This is going to help you so much. Trifarian Might, when you summon a 5+ power ally, it strikes the weakest enemy. This is super good for you, especially if you're through the Constellation or your support champs and followers you acquire get that Sun Spear that gives them an extra 3/3 when they're played with their Daybreak effect. That pretty much means almost every single card you play is going to be triggering this, and so it just gives you tons of removal. It is super, super fun. Also note, if you have Formidable, the way it works is it first checks to see if you're over 5+ power, but it will then strike with your health, since you're Formidable, which will normally be doing extra damage. So very fun. Next then, Crush. Allies have Overwhelm. Again, we've talked about this before. Overwhelm, it's not as important as in many other champions, because normally you can have ways to stun the enemy board or drag them aside with like a challenger unit, so still most of your units can get by and do the damage, but it does just help your overall consistency. Then we have Endurance. When ally survives damage, grant it 1/1. Most units, they're out there, they're taking damage, and they are trying to survive. This is just giving you further scaling, help your units be able to stay in the fight longer. Also note, if you block a unit with Barrier, and then they take a hit, even if they haven't technically taken damage, they're still granted that 1/1. And then hold it, round start, stun the strongest enemy. Again, just helping your consistency with stunning enemy units. Also, we don't have it listed here, but we mentioned a bunch of times earlier, the Slow But Steady, making all of your slow spells go off twice, actually very good for you because most of your spells are all slow. So taking a look at some support champions now. Up first, we have Targeting. Especially once you get to 4 stars, it is super, super good. And specifically ally targeting. You want to have effects that are able to target your own units. And then just anyone that has solid units. For Leona, pretty much all of her effects revolve around your Daybreak units. If you don't have any units on the board, you're kind of worthless. So having some other champions that have some solid units for you to be able to play around, especially units that can potentially be a little bit on the cheaper side, but still have decent stats, so you can try to get them on the board and start scaling up, can be quite nice. Now, for some examples, we have Pantheon, great for going with that targeting. That's his whole gimmick as well. He has a lot of faded, and he also scales with targeting, so he's going to be great for you. Then also we have Fiora. She has some really good units, and then she also is someone that can rely on her units, especially herself, to still try to end the game even without damaging the enemy nexus. And with that barrier, you could protect her so well that normally if you get Fiora, you can just consistently use her to end the game. I will also note here, we didn't list it here, but Renekton is another one that just has a bunch of very solid units that normally you could absolutely pair up super well with you. And he actually has a targeting spell as well. Now, for some cards to look out for, here on the left, Cataclysm, an ally starts a free attack, challenge the strongest enemy. This will be very good for you because since you're targeting one of your units, they're going to get barrier then and then do the attack. So this is going to be great for taking down an enemy target. Dark and Harp, or in general, just any equipment can actually be solid. So right here, it's a way to buff up your unit, give them that quick attack, and then since you're targeting them for that round, they're also getting that barrier. Sunblessed Vigor, cheap way to target your own unit. This also has some Hero's Horn on it, so great to get that champion draw. And then the next two here are just some general solid units. So the first one doesn't really have, it's not really a Daybreak unit on its own, but again, all of your allies from your 3-star are essentially Daybreak units. And then once you get in the constellation, you get that Daybreak Spear. That's further makes them Daybreak units. But the Zen also had Overwhelm, Dragon's Tooth, that Fury. So there's a solid, cheap unit you're going to be able to scale up and use to really leverage against your opponent. And then General of the Dunes, Daybreak, when you activate another Daybreak, grant the weakest enemy vulnerable. So that alone is solid because this is now having essentially 3 Daybreak effects. You have your 3-star, that Spear, and then he has his own Daybreak effect. So overall, that's pretty good. Has a decent stat line for a 4 cost. And then the Arcane Knowledge when someone draw a spell. You don't have the best draw as Leona, so having some cards that can supplement that is solid. And then lastly, Single Combat, an ally and enemy strike each other. Now, there's a lot of different cards that do pretty much the similar effect. Even the Cataclysm is kind of similar to that. But once you get to 4 stars, this is super, super good. Since when you're targeting your own unit, they're going to get barrier, and so they're not going to take any damage. Now, do note, even without having your 4-star, these effects will still be solid because you're normally going to have pretty big units that are going to be stronger than the enemies, so you can still leverage that against them. So even without the 4-star, still good, but with the 4-star, it's just excellent. Now let's finish off with the rankings. I think before level 20, she's roughly a C tier champion, and then I think after level 20, she's kind of B tier. I think for both of these, though, she's closer to the higher end, so higher end of C, but I wouldn't say quite B tier. And then after level 20, I think she is the high end of B, but I don't think she's quite strong enough to break into that A tier. So still solid and a good champion, but I just personally don't think she's quite strong enough for A. As far as the pros, your units are virtually unkillable unless they have just a flat-out obliterate or a kill spell. They're going to be super hard to kill. And you can also go for black shields, so they're also protected from spells, at least somewhat. You have insane scaling. Your units get absolutely massive. And you also can have a very solid amount of control. Now, your control is different than some other champions. It's not as consistent as like a Yasuo or Ashe, where it's just passively going off at the start of the round. Normally, it kind of comes in bursts, but especially in the mid game when you're trying to focus on ending, normally you can just have Leona stun the entire enemy board and then attack. So you do have a lot of control, but it's not quite like some other champions. Now, as far as cons, you are incredibly unit focused. Pretty much all of your effects are based on your units. Even your spells are normally buffing your units. And so generally, this isn't an issue in the fact that your units are very, very strong. But if the enemy is able to constantly like recall them, obliterate them, or use kill spells on them, you're going to have a very bad time. Then also, you are a bit of a ramp champion. Now, your Constellation does help this with giving you a lot of temporary stats like that Sun Spear, giving your units that 3/3 when you play them. So that makes them really big out the gate. And then every other round, you're able to scale them up. But you are still a bit of a ramp champion, so it can take a little bit to get going. I think overall for the regional rankings, I didn't want to have to put her in mid because I feel like I put most champions in mid. But I do think she is, in there in the mid tier. I think she's worse than Morgana. Now, Morgana is a dual region champ, but Morgana is still stronger. Aurelion Sol also, I'd say, is stronger as well. Now, whether you want to count that or not, that's up to you. Now, I do think that she is stronger than Yumi, though, so I don't think she's the bottom. And I think she is probably roughly similar to Kale, which is why I put her in mid. I think she's stronger than some, weaker than others. Overall, though, that's my thoughts on Leona. I hope this video was able to help you out. If it did, a like and subscribe is always appreciated, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.